When a luxury car dealership manager's political intolerance leads her to publicly humiliate a MAGA-wearing customer, she discovers too late that appearances can be deceiving. Her impulsive act of discrimination becomes a lesson in consequences when the man returns as her new boss, challenging everything she thought she knew about power, prejudice, and professional conduct. Sarah Mitchell never imagined that kicking someone out of her luxury car dealership for wearing a MAGA hat would come back to haunt her, let alone cost her the job she'd worked so hard to get. The morning had started like any other at Elite Motors, one of Connecticut's most prestigious car dealerships. Sarah straightened her designer blazer as she unlocked the showroom doors, letting the early summer sunlight dance across the polished hoods of six-figure vehicles. At 28, she was the youngest manager in the company's history, and she took pride in maintaining strict standards about who belonged in her showroom. The sales signs in the windows announced new ownership coming soon, but Sarah wasn't worried. She'd helped make this location the top performer in the region. Besides, she had more immediate concerns, like the weekly sales meeting where she planned to introduce her latest customer screening policy. The last thing Elite Motors needed was the wrong type of people sullying their reputation. "Morning, boss," called Jake from the coffee station. "Did you see the email about the new owner visiting this week?" "Just skimmed it," Sarah replied, adjusting a flower arrangement near a pearl-white Mercedes. "I'm sure they'll make a proper appointment." "We don't do surprise inspections here." The bell above the door chimed. Sarah looked up to see a middle-aged man in worn jeans and a navy polo shirt strolling in. Her eyes immediately locked onto the bright red MAGA hat on his head. Her stomach clenched. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, watching him approach a $180,000 Porsche. The man ran his fingers along the car's sleek lines, examining it with surprising knowledge. Something about his confident demeanor irritated her even more than the hat. "Tracy," Sarah snapped at a junior saleswoman, "go see what he wants. But make it clear we have minimum financing requirements." She emphasized the last words loud enough for the man to hear. Tracy hesitated. "He actually looks pretty interested in—" "Just do it," Sarah cut her off. She watched from behind her desk as the man discussed various models with Tracy, his voice carrying terms like torque specs and European delivery. When he mentioned wanting to see multiple vehicles, Sarah felt her blood pressure rising. This had gone on long enough. Squaring her shoulders, she marched across the showroom floor. She wasn't about to let some MAGA-wearing Trump supporter waste their time or tarnish their image. Elite Motors had standards to maintain, and she was going to make that crystal clear. The man turned as she approached, his face neutral but his eyes sharp and observant. Sarah failed to notice how the other employees tensed up, too focused on the confrontation she was about to initiate. Sarah planted herself between the man and the Porsche, her designer heels clicking sharply against the showroom floor. "Sir, I need to ask you to leave." Her voice carried across the silent showroom. The man, who had introduced himself to Tracy as Richard, raised an eyebrow. "Is there a problem with my interest in purchasing a vehicle?" "We maintain certain standards here at Elite Motors," Sarah said, pulling out her phone and starting to record. "Your political statement isn't aligned with our dealership's values of inclusion and respect." Richard remained remarkably calm. "I wasn't aware that my choice of hat affected my ability to purchase a car. I'm actually quite interested in several models." Sarah's fingers flew across her phone screen, already composing a social media post. "We have the right to refuse service to anyone. I won't have MAGA propaganda in my showroom." She angled her phone to capture his hat in the frame, carefully excluding the rest of their interaction. "Your showroom?" Richard asked quietly, taking out his own phone and pressing record. "Yes, my showroom," Sarah declared, her voice rising. "And I'm documenting this to protect our establishment from MAGA invasions. Now leave before I call security." Several employees shifted uncomfortably. Jake, the senior salesperson, stepped forward. "Sarah, maybe we should—" "Stay out of this, Jake," Sarah snapped, turning back to her phone. She quickly posted the edited clip, adding inflammatory hashtags about standing up to MAGA and protecting our spaces. She tagged the dealership's accounts for good measure. Richard calmly photographed the "Everyone Welcome" sign hanging prominently near the entrance. "Interesting policy interpretation," he noted, collecting business cards from the desk. Throughout the showroom, customers who had been browsing quietly gathered their things and left. Tracy hurriedly wrote down her contact information, sliding it to Richard with an apologetic look. Sarah was too busy monitoring her growing likes and supportive comments to notice the exodus. "See? My followers agree. We don't serve your kind here. This is a wake-up call for other establishments." "I see," Richard said, making notes on his phone. "And this is an official dealership policy?" "It's my policy," Sarah declared proudly, starting a new social media thread about her brave stand. She failed to notice Jake frantically texting corporate HR. The morning's events spread quickly through the dealership's departments. By lunch, Sarah had posted multiple times about her victory, complete with carefully edited clips showing only Richard's exit. She dismissed concerned comments from other employees about professionalism and customer service policies. "I'm planning a rally," she announced to the break room. "We need to send a message about who belongs in high-end establishments. Who's with me?" The uncomfortable silence that followed didn't deter her. She was too busy drafting her press release about taking a stand against MAGA influence in luxury retail to notice the growing unease among her staff or the steady documentation of her actions accumulating in Richard's phone. By late afternoon, Sarah's social media crusade had spread through local community groups like wildfire. She sat at her desk, refreshing her feeds constantly while adding increasingly inflammatory comments. "Another win for progress," she typed gleefully. "Elite Motors stands against MAGA hate. Share if you support keeping luxury spaces safe." The dealership's pristine showroom floor had grown unusually quiet. Sales staff huddled in corners, phones discreetly recording as Sarah marched through the displays, taping up hastily printed flyers declaring "Hate has no home here" on the windows. The irony of her actions seemed lost on her as she barked orders at increasingly uncomfortable employees. "We're organizing a protest for Saturday," she announced, dropping a stack of papers on Tracy's desk. "I expect everyone to attend. We need to show unified resistance against these people infiltrating our spaces." Tracy glanced nervously at Jake, who was quietly photographing the flyers. "Sarah, isn't this against company policy? We're not supposed to." "Company policy?" Sarah laughed sharply. "I run this showroom. I decide what's acceptable here." She turned to address the gathered staff. "Anyone who doesn't support this stance should really consider their future here." In his temporary office across town, Richard methodically documented each social media post, screenshot, and employee message flooding his inbox. The corporate investigation was proceeding exactly as planned, with Sarah providing more evidence by the hour. His phone buzzed with another text from Jake. "She's now requiring political loyalty pledges from sales staff." Sales numbers had started to plummet. The appointment book, usually filled weeks in advance, showed multiple cancellations. Local business leaders were sharing concerned messages about the dealership's dramatic shift in customer service philosophy. "We can't have MAGA supporters contaminating our premium brand," Sarah declared during an impromptu staff meeting, ignoring the visible discomfort of her employees. "I'm calling in support from local activist groups. We'll make an example of this dealership." As she spoke, more customers quietly left the showroom. A couple wearing designer clothes and interested in the new Cayenne hurriedly backed away when Sarah approached, demanding to know their political affiliation before discussing financing options. The corporate HR department's inbox filled with anonymous complaints from staff members. Video clips showed Sarah interrogating potential customers about their voting history. Photos captured her using company resources to print political materials. Each piece of evidence was carefully logged and added to the growing file. "This is just the beginning," Sarah announced, pinning another protest flyer to the break room bulletin board. "We're going to transform this dealership into a beacon of progressive values. Anyone who doesn't like it can leave." Little did she realize, as she planned her next social media broadcast, that Richard was already reviewing the final transition paperwork. The carefully documented pattern of discrimination, policy violations, and hostile work environment would make the coming changes impossible to contest. Outside the dealership windows, dark clouds gathered as Sarah refreshed her social media feeds obsessively. The unedited version of her confrontation with Richard had begun circulating, showing moments she'd carefully trimmed from her viral post. Comments shifted from supportive to critical, as viewers noticed her aggressive questioning and unauthorized filming of customers. "Ms. Henderson?" Linda from accounting approached cautiously, holding an envelope. "Corporate HR sent this over. It's marked urgent." Sarah snatched the envelope, tearing it open. Her face flushed as she read the formal warning about social media policy violations. "They can't silence us," she muttered, crumpling the letter and tossing it aside. The sales floor had become a maze of invisible battle lines. Veterans like Tom and Jessica stayed at their desks, heads down, while Sarah's small group of supporters clustered near her office, shooting disapproving looks at anyone who didn't join their impromptu political discussions. "Listen up, everyone," Sarah called out, standing on a chair in the break room during lunch. "We're having a mandatory meeting about unity against MAGA influence. Anyone who skips is clearly showing where their loyalties lie." Mark, a top salesman for 15 years, stood up slowly. "Sarah, we're here to sell cars, not judge customers' politics. I've got 3 families coming to look at SUVs this afternoon. Then maybe you should ask about their voting record before wasting time with fascist sympathizers," Sarah snapped, her voice echoing off the walls. The afternoon brought more cancellations. A regular customer who'd bought 5 vehicles from them over the years sent a scathing email about political harassment. The local business journal posted an article about declining luxury car sales in the area, specifically mentioning Elite Motors' controversial new customer screening practices. Security cameras silently recorded as Sarah intercepted an older couple wearing conservative clothing. "Before we discuss the new S-Class, I need to know your stance on progressive values," she demanded, blocking their path to the showroom. The couple left immediately. Jake added the footage to his growing file of similar incidents, carefully documenting times and dates. The dealership's review page filled with 1-star ratings mentioning political discrimination. In the staff kitchen, Tracy found Sarah using the company printer to create more protest materials. "Sarah, please, we're losing customers. The Hendersons canceled their Porsche order this morning." "Good riddance to bad politics," Sarah declared, taping another flyer to the coffee machine. "We're creating a safe space for the right kind of clients." Meanwhile, Richard's phone buzzed continuously with updates. Each message detailed another policy violation, customer complaint, or staff concern. The corporate legal team's file grew thicker as Sarah's crusade intensified, her actions building an irrefutable case for immediate intervention. Sarah's crusade continued to ripple through the dealership like a toxic wave. The following morning, she organized an impromptu protest during lunch break, positioning herself and 5 loyal employees near the entrance with hastily made signs declaring, "No space for hate at Elite Motors," and "MAGA Free Zone." "This is our moment to take a stand," Sarah announced, pacing before her small group. "Anyone not out here with us is part of the problem." She pulled out her phone, live-streaming the demonstration while narrating her version of the Richard incident for new viewers. Inside, Veteran salespeople exchanged worried glances as potential customers drove past the protest, turned around in the parking lot, and left. Tom, who'd been with Elite Motors for 12 years, watched another family drive away. "That's the third Mercedes appointment today that's canceled," he reported to Linda in accounting. "My kid's college fund depends on these commissions." "You're choosing money over morality," Sarah interrupted, having returned inside. Her heels clicked aggressively across the showroom floor. Anyone enabling conservatives is just as guilty as they are. The workplace divided further as Sarah's activism intensified. She created a Slack channel called Progressive Sales Force and began excluding non-participating employees from important communications. When Jessica declined to join, citing professional boundaries, Sarah removed her from the weekly sales strategy meeting. "But I'm the top performer this quarter," Jessica protested. "Not for long," Sarah smirked. "I'm implementing new customer screening guidelines." The regional office noticed the decline. Elite Motors' sales dropped 30% in 2 weeks. Regular maintenance clients, some who'd serviced their vehicles there for decades, transferred to competitors. The service department sat eerily quiet. Richard, meanwhile, methodically documented everything. His phone filled with recordings of Sarah's mandatory political meetings, screenshots of discriminatory policies, and statements from distressed employees. Each incident built a stronger case for corporate intervention. "I can't take this anymore," whispered Mark to the service manager. 20 years I've worked here, never asked a customer about their politics. Now I'm branded an enabler because I just want to do my job?" The final straw came when Sarah installed a camera at the reception desk, demanding staff record any customers wearing conservative identifying clothing or accessories. "We need to build our database of deplorables," she announced in the morning meeting, ignoring the horrified expressions around her. As she typed another inflammatory social media post, Sarah remained oblivious to the approaching storm. Her crusade had blinded her to the mounting evidence, the corporate investigations, and, most importantly, to Richard's quiet documentation of every misstep. Her position of authority, built on sales numbers she no longer achieved, grew more precarious by the hour. Corporate's response came swiftly and decisively. Within days of receiving multiple discrimination complaints, HR Director Jennifer Walsh arrived unannounced at Elite Motors, her presence sending ripples of anxiety through the showroom. "We've documented a 43% increase in customer complaints this quarter," Jennifer stated during an emergency management meeting. "And our preliminary investigation suggests a concerning pattern of politically motivated discrimination." Sarah sat rigid in her chair, arms crossed. "Those complaints are from people who don't align with our values. We're creating an inclusive environment. By excluding specific demographics?" Jennifer's tone remained professional but firm. "Our data shows the dealership has lost 3 major fleet contracts this month alone." Wilson Transport specifically cited hostile political atmosphere in their termination letter. The meeting grew tenser as Jennifer displayed graphs showing plummeting sales figures. Red lines descended like accusations across the projection screen. Sarah's department had dropped from top performer to bottom ranked in the region. "This isn't about politics," Tom interrupted, his voice shaking. "I had to explain to my wife why my commission check was half the usual amount. We're all suffering because customers are afraid to come in?" Sarah spun towards him. "Then find better customers. We don't need their toxic—" "That's enough," Jennifer cut in. "Sarah, effective immediately, you're required to attend workplace discrimination training. Additionally, all politically oriented workplace communications must cease." But Sarah viewed the intervention as validation. That evening, she sent a company-wide email describing herself as a victim of corporate suppression, and doubled down on her unofficial screening policies. She instructed the reception desk to flag any customers wearing American flag pins or driving vehicles with conservative bumper stickers. Behind the scenes, Richards methodically gathered evidence reached the highest levels of corporate leadership. In a private meeting with the board of directors, he presented a comprehensive timeline of Sarah's discriminatory actions, complete with video footage, employee testimonials, and financial impact reports. The liability exposure is significant, the corporate counsel noted, reviewing Richards' documentation. These screening policies directly violate multiple state and federal regulations. The regional manager, David Chen, placed Sarah's immediate supervisor on administrative leave for failing to address the situation. 3 more employees filed internal complaints about the hostile work environment, describing mandatory political meetings and professional retaliation. As Sarah posted another defiant message on the dealership's social media accounts, she remained unaware that Richards' acquisition plans were already in motion. Corporate leadership had fast-tracked the ownership transition, seeing it as the cleanest solution to their mounting crisis. "She's convinced herself she's fighting the good fight," Richard observed to the board. "But she's about to learn that discrimination, regardless of political targeting, has consequences." The investigation's scope widened as HR combed through months of security footage. Camera feeds revealed Sarah intercepting customers in the parking lot, her body language hostile as she confronted those wearing conservative-aligned clothing or accessories. In one particularly damning clip, she physically blocked an elderly veteran wearing a USS Arizona cap from entering the showroom. "We've identified 17 separate incidents of clear discrimination," Jennifer reported, spreading photographs across the conference table, including this exchange where Mrs. Martinez was told to shop somewhere more appropriate after mentioning her husband's military service. The financial impact reports painted an even grimmer picture. Sales analyst Mark Chen presented a color-coded chart showing the dealership's market share plummeting since Sarah implemented her unofficial screening policies. "We're looking at a 30% decline in luxury vehicle sales," Mark explained, pointing to a sharp downward trend. The Henderson Group specifically canceled their 5-car fleet order last week, citing uncomfortable political atmosphere as their reason. Throughout the building, the tension was palpable. Senior saleswoman Janet Cooper requested a transfer to their crosstown location, stating in her application that walking on political eggshells was affecting her mental health. 3 other employees followed suit within days. Meanwhile, Richard methodically built his case. His office became a command center of documentation. Customer complaints filed chronologically, employee statements organized by department, and social media screenshots revealing Sarah's growing public defiance. A particularly troubling post showed her bragging about keeping the MAGA crowd away from our premium vehicles. The employee tip line rang constantly. "She made us attend weekly cultural awareness meetings," one anonymous caller reported. "But they were just sessions to mock conservative viewpoints. Missing them affected our schedule preferences." Security guard Mike Peterson provided written testimony about Sarah's watch list, a document instructing front desk staff to scrutinize certain customer appearances and vehicle decorations for problematic indicators. "The reputation damage is spreading beyond our doors," David Chen noted during a board update. The Chamber of Commerce called yesterday expressing concerns about discriminatory business practices in their member network. Sarah's behavior grew increasingly erratic as the walls closed in. She installed a large safe space banner across the showroom entrance and demanded employees wear progressive political pins. When 3 staff members declined, their prime sales floor positions were reassigned to breakroom duty. Richard's evidence file grew thicker by the day. Email threads revealed Sarah directing internet leads to be screened for political compatibility before receiving quotes. Customer review screenshots showed multiple complaints about hostile treatment based on perceived political leanings. Even the cleaning service canceled their contract after Sarah interrogated their workers about their voting history. The local business journal began investigating after multiple tips about discrimination at the prestigious dealership. Sarah's response was to ban problematic media from the premises, further isolating the business from the community it once served. The mounting evidence sparked an emergency board meeting where corporate leadership reviewed the full scope of Sarah's discriminatory practices. Security footage played on the boardroom screen, showing Sarah physically blocking a retired teacher wearing an American flag pin from even entering the showroom. "Our liability exposure is reaching critical levels," warned corporate counsel Lisa Matthews, clicking through a PowerPoint of documented incidents. "We've identified 43 potential discrimination suits based on political affiliation, which is protected under state law." The financial hemorrhaging continued as word spread through the business community. 3 major corporate fleet accounts suspended their contracts pending review, representing over $2 million in annual revenue. The dealership's flagship status within the luxury brand network hung by a thread. Employee morale hit rock bottom as Sarah's paranoia reached new heights. She installed cameras specifically to monitor staff political discussions during breaks and demanded access to their personal social media accounts. When junior salesman Tom Parker refused, citing privacy concerns, his desk was relocated to the service department waiting area. "Look at these internal messages," Richard noted, sharing his screen during a private meeting with HR. The chat logs showed Sarah instructing floor managers to track customer political donations through public records before allowing test drives. She's created an entire surveillance system around political profiling. The evidence file now required its own filing cabinet. Customer complaints detailed being subjected to impromptu political purity tests before receiving price quotes. Former employees submitted sworn statements about mandatory attendance at anti-conservative rallies during lunch breaks. Even the local coffee cart vendor canceled service after Sarah demanded they remove Fox News from their tablet display. "We've documented a systematic pattern of discrimination," Jennifer confirmed, reviewing staff surveys. Over 60% of employees report feeling pressured to express specific political views to maintain their positions or advancement opportunities. Sarah's grip on reality seemed to slip further each day. She plastered the break room with partisan political cartoons and scheduled mandatory viewing sessions of progressive political commentators. When the cleaning crew supervisor objected to wearing campaign buttons during their shift, their contract was immediately terminated. Richard quietly continued gathering evidence, his office now resembling a war room of documentation. Maps tracked customer complaints by zip code, spreadsheets cataloged lost revenue by political motivation, and timeline charts showed the escalating pattern of discriminatory behavior. Through it all, he maintained his cover as a concerned corporate observer, knowing the moment of revelation drew closer. The local business community's patience wore thin. The Chamber of Commerce issued a formal warning about discriminatory practices, and 3 neighboring dealerships filed complaints about Sarah's staff poaching customers by promising politically safe shopping environments. The prestigious dealership's reputation, built over decades of professional service, crumbled under the weight of Sarah's ideological crusade. The investigation's findings painted an even darker picture as Richard methodically compiled evidence for the upcoming board presentation. Employee interviews revealed Sarah had created an elaborate scoring system, rating customers on a conservative risk scale based on everything from their vehicle choices to their coffee preferences. "She made us document if customers listened to country music during test drives," admitted Jessica Chen, a senior sales associate. Anyone with religious symbols or American flag accessories was automatically flagged for enhanced screening before being shown premium vehicles. The financial impact proved staggering. A detailed audit revealed over $5.7 million in lost sales opportunities over the past year alone. The spreadsheets told a clear story. Qualified buyers mysteriously disappeared after initial contact, their applications mysteriously lost, or financing suddenly unavailable if they displayed any conservative leanings. "Look at this internal memo," Jennifer from HR pointed out during a private meeting with Richard. The document outlined Sarah's customer culture guidelines, which included instructions like note presence of military bumper stickers, refer to other dealerships if detected, and monitor customer social media for problematic political donations before approving test drives. Sarah's behavior grew increasingly erratic as pressure mounted. She instituted mandatory sensitivity training sessions, which amounted to hours of progressive political lectures. When veteran salesman Mike Rodriguez suggested they focus on selling cars instead of screening political views, she reassigned him to inventory counting in the backlot. "We've documented 17 instances of direct customer discrimination in the past month alone," Lisa Matthews noted, updating the legal exposure assessment. Security footage showed Sarah personally intercepting a retired police officer wearing a thin blue line bracelet, steering him away from a luxury SUV he'd planned to purchase. The employee break room transformed into a partisan war zone under Sarah's increasingly militant management style. Conservative-leaning newspapers disappeared from the waiting area, replaced with stacks of progressive publications. Staff members reported being questioned about their voting history during performance reviews. Richard carefully organized the mounting evidence, each incident meticulously documented and cross-referenced. Customer complaints now filled 3 separate binders, organized by date and severity. The pattern was undeniable. Sarah had systematically created a hostile environment for anyone she perceived as politically opposed to her views. She started requiring political donation receipts from employees who want to work premium shifts, reported Tom Parker, now relegated to the service department. Last week she told Maria she couldn't represent our top-tier vehicles unless she could prove she supported the right candidates. The workplace culture deteriorated further as Sarah's paranoia intensified. Security cameras appeared in new locations daily, accompanied by signs warning against politically inappropriate conversations. Staff turnover reached unprecedented levels as experienced salespeople fled the toxic environment, leaving behind a skeleton crew of fearful employees who walked on, eggshells around their increasingly unstable manager. The dealership's once pristine reputation crumbled further as corporate headquarters demanded daily reports on the mounting crisis. Internal auditors discovered Sarah had programmed the customer relationship management system to automatically flag anyone with military email domains or addresses from predominantly conservative zip codes. "We've uncovered at least 32 denied financing applications where the customers met all criteria," reported Marcus from the corporate compliance team. The only common factor was their perceived political leanings. He spread printouts across the conference table, showing credit scores well above 800 rejected without explanation. Local business groups began distancing themselves from the dealership. The Chamber of Commerce quietly removed Sarah from their leadership council, citing concerns about inclusive business practices. 3 major charitable organizations redirected their fleet purchases to competitors after learning about the discrimination allegations. Sarah's desperate attempt to rally support through an all-staff meeting backfired spectacularly. "We have a responsibility to protect our brand from certain elements," she declared, pacing anxiously. "Sometimes that means making tough choices about who deserves to represent our luxury vehicles." Her words prompted immediate resignations from 2 veteran salespeople. The manufacturer's regional director arrived unannounced, bringing more bad news. "We've received complaints from 17 qualified buyers who were turned away without cause," he stated firmly. "Our brand cannot be associated with discriminatory practices. You have 48 hours to demonstrate significant changes, or we'll be forced to review our dealership contract." Richard watched the situation unfold from his temporary office, carefully documenting each development. Security footage showed Sarah spending hours scrubbing internal communications and shredding documents, but IT had already backed up everything to corporate servers. Her increasingly frantic attempts to control the narrative only provided more evidence of systematic discrimination. "Look at these customer surveys," Jennifer said, delivering another stack of complaints. She actually created a checklist of conservative indicators for the reception staff. Everything from American flag pins to certain brands of work boots. Anyone hitting 3 or more markers was to be told the showroom was closed for training. Sarah's social media post about her confrontation with Richard gained attention for all the wrong reasons. Local business leaders recognized him as a major investor in several successful enterprises. Her description of rudely dismissing a MAGA rube struck many as unprofessional at best, discriminatory at worst. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. Sarah strutted around the dealership with forced confidence, but her hand-picked allies were jumping ship. The finance manager quietly updated his resume. The service department head gathered records of every time Sarah had delayed repairs for customers she deemed politically unsuitable. "It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck," whispered Lisa from Legal Affairs, reviewing the latest harassment complaints. "She's created liability issues that could take years to untangle." The stack of documented infractions grew hourly as more employees came forward, finally free to speak about Sarah's toxic leadership. The emergency board meeting opened with a sobering presentation from the regional financial director. "Quarter-over-quarter revenue is down 32% compared to last year," he stated, clicking through stark graphs of declining sales. "Customer retention has dropped to historic lows, with a direct correlation to reported incidents of discriminatory treatment." Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat as marketing presented screenshots of social media backlash. Her post about the MAGA rube had been shared thousands of times, drawing criticism from business leaders and civil rights advocates alike. The dealership's once pristine online rating had plummeted from 4.8 to 2.1 stars in just 3 weeks. "We've documented 17 separate instances where qualified buyers were turned away based on perceived political affiliations," the HR director reported, distributing thick folders of evidence. "Multiple employees have provided sworn statements about being instructed to profile customers based on appearance, vehicle choice, and even bumper stickers." The service department manager stepped forward, his voice steady. "I have records of delayed repairs and inflated quotes for customers Sarah flagged as politically unsuitable." He placed a spreadsheet on the table showing systematic overcharging of clients who displayed conservative indicators. Security footage played on the boardroom screen, showing Sarah directing staff to close the showroom when a group of veterans arrived wearing American flag pins. Another clip captured her mocking an elderly couple in MAGA hats as they left disappointed, unable to view a car they'd specifically come to purchase. "Our partnership with the Military Family Association has been suspended," announced the Community Relations Coordinator. 3 corporate fleet contracts are under review, and the local First Responders Union has publicly stated they'll take their business elsewhere. Sarah's attempts to defend herself only deepened the crisis. "We have to take a stand against enabling certain ideologies," she insisted, her voice rising. "I'm protecting our brand's image." Her words prompted visible winces from the corporate representatives. The external consultant's report proved devastating. Employee interviews reveal a pattern of systematic discrimination extending beyond political beliefs, she explained. Ms. Thompson repeatedly used company resources to organize political activism, including using the customer database to target conservative neighborhoods for protest activities. As the evidence mounted, Sarah's remaining supporters abandoned her cause. The finance department provided records of perfectly qualified buyers rejected for dubious reasons, all sharing conservative indicators in their applications. The parts department revealed instructions to delay orders for customers Sarah deemed politically undesirable. "This isn't just about one incident," concluded the regional director, glancing meaningfully at the empty chair where Richard would soon sit. "We're seeing a pattern of behavior that has materially damaged our business, violated our ethical standards, and exposed us to significant legal liability." Sarah remained defiant, tapping angry messages on her phone. She was organizing a protest against corporate complicity in hate, unaware that her hastily typed calls for action were being automatically archived by IT, providing even more evidence of her misuse of company resources. The board members exchanged knowing looks as they scheduled the final disciplinary hearing. Soon, Sarah would learn the true cost of judging books by their covers, and the price of letting political prejudice override professional judgment. The boardroom fell silent as footsteps echoed down the hallway. Sarah straightened her blazer, still formulating arguments about brand protection and corporate responsibility. The door opened smoothly, revealing Richard in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. The regional executives immediately stood, their body language shifting from stern disapproval to deferential respect. "Please be seated, everyone," Richard said quietly, his calm authority filling the room. Sarah blinked in confusion as he took his place at the head of the table, setting down a leather portfolio embossed with the corporate logo. The same portfolio she'd seen him carrying the day she'd mocked him in the showroom. The HR director cleared her throat. "Mr. Anderson, we've completed our investigation into the discrimination complaints." She gestured to the wall screen where security footage played silently. "As you can see, the pattern of behavior is quite clear." Sarah's face drained of color as she recognized herself in the footage, turning away a retired military couple wearing veterans' caps. The next clip showed her directing a salesperson to ignore a family whose minivan sported a conservative bumper sticker. Her own voice echoed through the speakers. "We don't serve their kind here." "The financial impact has been substantial," the regional director added, clicking through slides of plummeting sales figures. "Our reputation in the community." "I think we all understand the situation," Richard interrupted softly. He turned to Sarah, his expression neutral but firm. "Ms. Thompson, I've reviewed every incident personally. I've read your social media posts, your internal emails, and your instructions to staff. I've spoken with the customers you turned away and the employees you pressured to participate in discrimination." Sarah's fingers twisted nervously in her lap as Richard pulled out her viral social media post about the MAGA rube himself and placed it on the table. "Would you care to explain why you felt it appropriate to publicly mock a potential customer and use company resources to organize political harassment?" I was protecting our image," Sarah stammered, her previous confidence evaporating. "This is a luxury brand. We can't just—" "Can't just what?" Richard asked quietly. "Serve Americans with different political views? Treat veterans with respect? Honor our commitment to equal service regardless of personal beliefs?" The security footage continued playing silently behind him, a damning documentary of Sarah's systematic discrimination. Employee statements flashed across the screen, each one describing her increasingly hostile behavior toward anyone she deemed politically unsuitable. "Our dealership's reputation wasn't built on exclusion," Richard continued, his voice carrying the weight of corporate authority. "It was built on excellence, respect, and professional service for every customer who walks through those doors. Your actions have betrayed those values and damaged the trust we've spent decades building in this community." Sarah slumped in her chair as the full reality of her situation became crystal clear. The MAGA rube she'd so casually dismissed wasn't just another customer. He was now her boss, and he had witnessed firsthand the discriminatory culture she'd created. "The numbers don't lie," the finance director added, sliding forward another report. We've documented a 30% decline in sales since these discriminatory practices began. That represents millions in lost revenue, not counting potential lawsuits. Sarah's mouth opened and closed silently as more evidence mounted. The HR director clicked through a series of screenshots showing Sarah's private employee Slack channel, where she'd organized boycotts of Republican-owned vendor companies and instructed sales staff to redirect certain customers to other dealerships. I have statements from 12 customers who were turned away, Richard continued, his voice remaining measured, including 3 veterans, a retired police officer, and a local business owner who was planning to purchase our vehicles for his entire fleet. He paused, letting the weight of lost opportunities sink in. That fleet contract alone was worth $2.4 million. They took their business to our competitors. The marketing director raised her hand tentatively. Sir, our latest market research shows a 40% drop in brand perception among conservative demographics. We're now seen as actively hostile to half our potential customer base. Sarah's colleagues, who had initially defended her actions as standing up for progressive values, now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The sales manager from the downtown branch cleared his throat. I need to acknowledge that Sarah pressured my team to implement similar screening practices. I regret not reporting it sooner. This isn't fair, Sarah protested, her voice cracking. The political climate is toxic. I was trying to protect our upscale image. By assuming someone's worth based on their perceived political beliefs, Richard interrupted, still calm but firm. The security footage shows you mocking an elderly couple wearing American flag pins. They were coming to purchase our top-line luxury sedan for their 50th anniversary. The board members exchanged troubled glances as more evidence appeared on screen. Email threads showing Sarah coordinating with activist groups to harass conservative customers. Social media posts where she bragged about cleaning up the dealership's clientele, and internal memos directing staff to create fake service delays for customers she deemed undesirable. Your actions weren't protecting our image, Richard stated, placing another document on the table. They were systematically destroying it. We've received formal complaints from the Chamber of Commerce, the Better Business Bureau, and 3 civil rights organizations. The legal counsel cleared his throat. Ms. Thompson, your social media posts alone have exposed the company to multiple discrimination lawsuits. Your written instructions to staff regarding customer profiling violate state and federal law. Sarah's face flushed red as she watched her carefully constructed justifications crumble. Each piece of evidence revealed the extent of her bias, while Richard's composed presentation highlighted the stark contrast between her discriminatory behavior and true professional leadership. I think we've seen enough, announced the board chairman, closing his folder with a decisive snap. The evidence painted an undeniable picture of Sarah's systematic discrimination and its devastating impact on the dealership. Richard stood at the head of the conference table, still maintaining his characteristic composure. As the new owner of this dealership, I believe in second chances. However, I also believe in accountability. He turned to face Sarah directly. Your actions have cost this business millions in revenue, damaged our reputation, and created a hostile work environment that goes against everything we stand for. Sarah's face had lost all color as the full reality of her situation sank in. The carefully edited social media video she'd posted now played side by side with the complete security footage, revealing her deliberate manipulation of events. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated, Richard continued. Furthermore, our legal team will require a public retraction and apology posted to the same social media platforms where you promoted discrimination against our customers. The HR director stepped forward with additional documents. We've documented over 30 instances of politically motivated customer rejection, resulting in $3.2 million in lost sales. The hostile work environment you created has led to 11 employee transfers and 15 formal complaints. Within weeks, the dealership underwent a remarkable transformation under Richard's leadership. New anti-discrimination policies were implemented, backed by mandatory professional conduct training. The sales team was deliberately diversified to include people of varying political backgrounds, with customer satisfaction becoming the only metric that mattered. The local business community took notice. The Chamber of Commerce invited Richard to help draft new workplace conduct guidelines, using the dealership's experience as a cautionary tale. Other businesses began reviewing their own policies regarding political expression in the workplace. 3 months later, sales had increased by 45%. The dealership became known for its strictly professional, politically neutral environment, where every customer received the same high-level service. Richard's leadership style, firm but fair, principled but professional, became a model for handling political conflicts in business settings. The security footage of Sarah's original confrontation with Richard now plays during new employee orientation, followed by Richard's favorite saying, "In business, character and competence matter more than politics." Every customer deserves respect, regardless of what hat they're wearing. Sarah's story circulated through local business circles as a warning about letting political bias override professional judgment. Meanwhile, Richard's patient, strategic response demonstrated how to transform a negative incident into an opportunity for positive organizational change. The dealership didn't just recover, it thrived, setting a new standard for professional conduct in an increasingly polarized world.